to Exploration Tech session number 2 of 2022. As we stated in the last Exploration Tech, we were off to a slight slow start, but for good reason. A lot of positive things happening here at Brilliance, and we're excited to connect with you today and bring one of our favorite guests, lead developer extraordinaire, Drew Douglas. And I will keep my intro short here so we can get into it because we've seen a lot of interest in this topic, which is super exciting. My name is Jared Hackman. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing here at Brilliance. Been here for 6 years, and really, as we were working on Exploration Tech for 2022, we sat down and said, what were our most successful sessions in 2021 and what was bringing the most intrigue to our audience and the most value to our audience? And really, when we looked at that data, and we came up with a few assumptions, one being going back to our technical roots and really focusing on these types of topics is where people found the most value in Exploration Tech. So really excited to be diving into this with you guys today. I'll pass it to Lori and let her introduce herself.
Yes, hello. I'm so excited to be here as well. I'm Lori McDonald. I started Brilliance in 1998. My background's in computer electrical engineering, and what most people remember about me is that I worked at NASA Johnson Space Center as a flight controller for the Space Shuttle program. I ended up meeting my husband at NASA. He also was a flight controller for the Space Shuttle program. He eventually went to work for Rockwell Automation and had a job promotion that brought us to Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I was trying to figure out what could be as cool as space, and that's how Brilliance got started. I decided to start a web development company. Because our background was technical, we found that we were a really good fit for working in the digital space, and specifically in terms of digital commerce. And with my husband's background at Rockwell Automation, we also found we were really uniquely equipped to work in the B2B space, working with manufacturers and distributors to implement digital solutions. And also we were really skilled at data integrations. So Dave left Rockwell, I think now 11 years ago, and now he leads our development team. And we've grown along the way. Being in business in the tech space in 20 years, the technology has certainly changed over time, which is what we'll get to talk about today. But through that, we developed partnerships with an organization called Original Episerver when we partnered with them. Now they're Optimizely. We're big fans of the platform and the technology. We've really always had our roots in the Microsoft tech stack. And as a part of that growth, very excited when Drew Douglas joined our team. Drew, I think it was 9 years ago now, and has really been a part of helping our team to get better and grow in terms of our work with technology on the whole. So Drew, I'd love to let you introduce yourself.
Thanks, Lori. Yeah, I'm excited to be here too. My name is Drew Douglas. I'm a lead developer at Brilliance. I joined Brilliance 9 years ago, right out of school, and it's been a great experience working, like you said, with Optimizely. I was really excited when we adopted that platform, and working in the .NET space has been really gratifying.
Great. So a few housekeeping items to get to. If you have any questions, please feel free to punch them in the chat box. We'll do our best to address those throughout the conversation today. If you're watching this on YouTube, please like, comment, and subscribe. It really goes a long way in supporting us, creating this educational content for all of you. All right, so let's get into the meat here. Drew, Professor, tell us about the history of .NET.
Sure. So maybe it makes sense just to talk a little bit about what .NET is first, and then I can talk about the history. The .NET is a software framework, so it's something that developers use to build applications with. So of course, applications are the things that users use to get tasks done, and a framework lets developers build those applications more easily. It lets us focus on delivering the features that you want to see in the software that you're using, while still maintaining good performance, security, and things like that. .NET was introduced in 2002, so 20 years ago. They just had a big anniversary. And it was very difficult at that time to work on the Windows platform for new developers. And .NET sort of packaged up the features that Windows provided and allowed developers to do things like serve web pages. That was the ASP.NET framework. Create desktop applications. That was the WinForms framework. And interface with databases. That's ADO.NET. And so it really makes things a lot easier. And over the years, Microsoft added on to that .NET framework, added new features, making things even easier for developers, adding new application types as the web became more and more important, adding communications frameworks. And then as developers started learning more about functional programming, adding things to make reasoning about programs much, much easier. So that was all well and good. But as technology improves, there are new ways of doing things, new techniques. And some of the problems that .NET solved in the beginning just weren't problems that .NET really needed to solve. And because it was solving those problems, there were some design decisions that were baked into the system that made it more difficult to get good performance, to use the system. There's more boilerplate code that you had to write. And so in, I think about 2012 or the early 2010s, Microsoft realized that they needed to pare down the .NET framework. There was another framework called Java. It was originally developed by a company called Sun Microsystems, now Oracle. And Java is still a ubiquitous programming language and a framework also. And the promise of Java was that it would run anywhere. You could run it on Windows, you could run it on Linux, you could run it on Mac, and .NET didn't have that. That was one thing that was an issue. There were problems that it solved that just weren't problems anymore. And so in the early 2010s, Microsoft decided to basically restart developments on the framework, to pare out the things that they didn't need, to simplify and streamline the API for programmers, to make it easier for programmers to use it. And that's how the .NET Core, as it was known, framework was born. So Microsoft released the .NET Core platform 5 years ago, and it was really, they were giving it to developers to use to build production apps, but also to learn about. And we released with .NET 5, the most recent release, .NET 6 just came out, the most recent prior release. .NET has really reached maturity. And along with that, Optimizely has released their own libraries, their own application framework for building commerce and content solutions in this .NET 5 environment.
Drew, that was such a great summary. Like, you just encapsulated like 20 years in like 4 minutes. So thanks. That was awesome. I know we targeted this episode of Exploration Tech really speaking to business users about the value of .NET 5 and the value of .NET Core. So understanding that history and background is really helpful. What would you say are the problems that are being solved by .NET 5 and thinking about what the value is of making this move?
Yeah, so I think the biggest one is cross-platform availability. So like I said, being able to run on Windows servers, on Linux servers, or being able to run on a Mac really just gives you a lot more flexibility. It gives you a lot more options. So if you're running a website, you can choose to run your web application either on a Windows server or on a Linux server, or you can host it on any one of the various cloud platforms that provides these environments. So you can host on Azure, you can host on Google Cloud, you can host on Amazon AWS. And it makes it a lot easier to run in those different spaces. It solved some performance problems too. .NET Framework has had a lot of performance improvements that's the old version, over the years. And the most recent ones are still quite fast, but without having to support some of the older features, .NET 5 really makes things a lot faster. And I've got some numbers we can share from our own experience upgrading our own applications from .NET Framework to .NET Core. And then ease of use and composability is another big problem that it solves. So the old .NET framework was a little more brittle, and it was harder to bring other frameworks and other applications to integrate with maybe backend systems. And the new APIs and the new interfaces in .NET Core make it a lot easier to compose applications, to make use of outside services, and for you as a developer to have a choice about what technologies you want to leverage your application.
I know you talked about performance. Why is .NET 5 and 6 faster?
Yeah, so like I said, developments in programming techniques and technology have just come a long way in the last 20 years. And the hardware actually has gotten better. The hardware that we use as developers, our laptops and stuff, but also the server hardware has gotten better. And .NET Core is able to make better use of that hardware by using new instructions and new resources that the hardware provides. They also have employed new data structures, new ways of modeling what this hardware is. So, I mean, the framework takes something like a file. It lives on your hard drive in an operating system or lives in the cloud, and it makes it much easier to interact with that as opposed to having to know a lot about the hardware and the operating system. You really just need to name the file, know how to reference where it is, and then let the operating system take over for you for opening it, reading the file, and giving you the text out of it or whatever else is in the file, or sending a request over the wire from a web browser to a web server and back. So more efficient programming techniques. They've also improved the ability to compile the code into smaller and fewer instructions, and that makes execution of code faster. They've also given developers a lot more ways to be efficient. So a lot more interfaces and simpler interfaces for doing things like if you read that file into memory, it's a lot easier to save it in memory, which is much faster than having to go get it from the file system. Like I said, stripping out older features that don't need to be supported anymore makes it easier for Microsoft to reason about their own code and improve it. And then they've also open sourced the framework, which means that any developer, anyone in the world can read the source code for a vast majority of the .NET framework. And because of that, they've opened up the .NET framework to allow outside contributors to contribute fixes, improvements, and a lot of the performance improvements have come from the .NET team inside Microsoft, but some have come from people outside Microsoft too. So for all of those reasons, it's faster. It's been, for me as a developer, a lot better experience working with it.
So I'd love to build off of performance here now that you've done a great job of defining why it's faster, and put you on the spot here, Drew. How much faster is it?
Well, so I'm going to be a consultant and say it depends, but I can give you a specific scenario where I show you that it actually is faster. So this is a comparison of our Catalyst application. So our Catalyst application is built on top of the Optimizely framework, which is built on top of the .NET framework. And this is an accelerator that we use for some of our clients to start development for their own websites. And what we did was we took the code that we had for .NET framework, and we tried to do a good job of making our .NET 5 platform as feature similar as possible. So taking all the things that we had from the .NET framework and putting them into .NET 5. So this is a comparison from our old website to the new website on .NET 5. And to caveat that this is a very unscientific survey. I did a few web pages on our site, and it's a really beefy server that this is running on, so this might not be comparable to all situations. Also, this is a comparison of page load time. So after the site has been warmed up, after the pages are all warmed up and cached, you can see that there is definite performance improvements in my observations from the old site to the new site. But again, it depends. So you can see there are a couple different page types here. The product page is only slightly faster. Maybe that's because we're making a lot more database calls than we would for, say, the home page. The category page has an outside dependency. So we need to call to a different service to find out what the products within this category are. And so you can see that takes a lot more time. So performance improvement that you see on the rest of the pages is anywhere between 20 and 60%. But for some pages, you're just not going to get that performance improvement. So you can see how .NET in certain circumstances can improve your performance right out of the box, but you still need to be a good application developer and think about all the other parts of your application, not just the framework when you're thinking about performance.
Yeah, I love both that data. It's really exciting when we see things that can help us make experiences faster, because we know faster performance leads to better results for customers, better experience, more money, more transactions, all of that. Also, Drew, I love your explanation, because the reality is we don't want to overpromise what this is. We want to be realistic about there are places where this really has some really exciting benefits. Also, it doesn't mean magically everything is going to be instantaneous. It's good to understand realistically what we're talking about. When we talk about organizations and their planning for technology, one of the things that we'll often talk about is technical debt. And it's one of the reasons that we wanted to partner with Episerver in the beginning, is because we saw Episerver now Optimizely as a platform that really allows you to have an architectural framework that can support having low technical debt. One of the things that I think is also exciting about .NET 5 and 6, .NET Core, is that it offers lower technical debt. And I'd love from your perspective as a developer who's working with this, how you see what that means for an organization.
Yeah, so when I think about technical debt, I think about software systems or application systems that are hard to work with for developers, that are hard to modify and maintain. So by maintenance, I mean, not just adding new features, but adding software fixes for security, fixes for correctness. And I really think that .NET 5 provides a safer path to upgrade because of the availability of new libraries, easier to use libraries, and I feel like it's much easier to choose the systems that you work with. So because of that, it still takes an investment in order to overcome this technical debt. So the technical debt is really in older platforms is making it harder to work with. And the improvements, they let you compose different libraries and applications together more easily. And so that choice lets you choose newer frameworks that provide more security and better features. It's hard to talk about completely in the whole sense.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Well, and what I hear you talking about is because of the fact that the code's more composable and maintainable. Like one of the ways that benefits organizations is as new developers join the team, it should be easier for them to work with, easier for organizations to maintain a level of quality with their code. And on the flip side, it doesn't mean that just because you're on .NET 5 or 6, like you instantly will arrive at that level of quality, right? To your point, it takes some work to get there, but the way that it's architected supports that and allows for that in the process of making that move in an easier way. Did I say that right, Drew?
I would agree with all of that, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm confident our audience would love to hear recommendations on how they would prepare their team to solve for the technical debt situation. How would you recommend they prepare in order to be, as effective as possible?
Sure. There's a couple things that a software team needs to do to overcome the technical debt and really leverage .NET 5. First is training. So it's understanding, what the features and things that .NET 5 provides. So there are a lot of resources on the web, different course sites. Pluralsight is one of my favorites, but I know that everyone learns differently. So maybe you want a video platform and maybe you just want to follow blogs. I will say that the Microsoft documentation is really good, and the Optimizely documentation for .NET 5 is good and getting better. And they also have lots of really great example projects on places like GitHub. So training is definitely one thing that you want to pursue as a team. So once you know what the features and things that you want to target in the .NET 5 are, you really need to take an inventory of your existing systems and make sure that you understand what features those existing systems are providing and how they'll be translated into .NET 5. So what does the framework provide that you don't need to program for anymore, that you can just call the framework and let the framework deal with? And what are the things that the framework is really letting developers take over on, and what do you need to do? And then it is analyzing what the work that's going to take your old code and put it into the new system. Or maybe you have an application that you want to pair off and leave in .NET Framework, and you want to start building a new application to implement these new features. And find a way for these two applications to continue to interact so that the old software can continue to provide the value that you've invested in it, and the new software can make use of all the new stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And obviously, it never hurts to work with someone who's been through the process before, right? And our team's been gaining experience on it. Drew, you've been gaining experience on it, and that's one of the ways we can help people too.
We have an audience question that came in around Optimizely and .NET. Can you tell us about Optimizely's support of .NET 5 and 6, and maybe more specifically, what versions have they released to support that?
Yeah, so the last versions on .NET Framework were CMS 11 and Commerce 13, and the new versions are CMS 12 and Commerce 14. So they released the new versions 12 and 14 in October of last year, and developers chance to play with stuff a little bit before that. So they released some beta versions earlier than that. They've been in the process of getting all of their libraries into .NET 5. And I think they just completed some of the final core packages that really allowed you to interoperate with external systems in the last month. So we've been evaluating those and, like I said, developing our starter application on those. And the support has been great. There are still, a little few bugs to work out. So, us early adopters are trying to provide feedback and help to Epi to really tune things up and make it really easy to work with. But the support for the entire .NET 5 platform is there. They've also created new environments for .NET 5 code to run in their DXP platform. So DXP is a service that Episerver provides, a managed service to run your application in the cloud. They take care of deploying solutions, monitoring them. They provide a lot of great security features. And these new environments are much more efficient to run in than the old Azure services that they were in. It's a new Azure service platform, but it's much more efficient.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been really exciting. I've been excited to see Optimizely prioritize this on their roadmap, and I think they really recognize the value also that it will provide to their customers. I am curious, Drew, because I think you remember the day that it occurred to me that we as a team were putting all this effort into moving to .NET 5 with Catalyst, and then all of a sudden, .NET 6 is coming out and .NET 5 is being retired in short order. Correct me if I have any of those things wrong, but it surprised me how quickly that was happening. And I just wondered if you could talk about that and what organizations should expect in terms of .NET 5 and 6.
Yeah, so the big jump really was from .NET Framework to .NET Core, or .NET, now .NET 5. And so a lot of the work that we did was getting things retooled into the new framework.
Yeah.
.NET 6 is going to be an incremental improvement to the .NET platform, and really it was anticipated that .NET 5 would be a short-term support from Microsoft and that .NET 6 would be long-term support. So they figured things out better on .NET 5 and put those improvements for simplicity into .NET 6. So we are going to be moving to .NET 6 very shortly. .NET 5 support is ending in, I believe, May of this year, so it's coming up very quickly. But the transition from .NET 5 to .NET 6, while not trivial, will be very simple for most teams. And .NET 6 just provides additional performance improvements. I was just reading a blog article on just-in-time compiler improvements they've made and some code features to make the interface for programming easier.
Awesome. Yes. Yeah. And so, my high-level takeaway is, there's a fair amount of work that goes into the move to .NET 5, and the move to .NET 6 should be a lot faster.
Absolutely.
That's great. Great news. And then the other thing that I've heard from some Optimizely customers is like, will I have to upgrade? Am I going to be forced to do this? And I know, Drew, we've been talking about this as well. So what's the answer?
No, the answer is no. No, so the answer is Optimizely is going to continue to support code on .NET Framework. It's going to continue to provide security and reliability updates. It's going to continue to support the DXP environment for framework code for the foreseeable future. Businesses have invested a lot of time and effort in making these applications great, and they want to see that value persistent.
Yes, and that's the same thing for, Microsoft will be continuing to support .NET Framework for a long time as well. The difference will be new feature development is really going to be focused on .NET 5, .NET 6, .NET Core, I think both for Microsoft's perspective and from Optimizely's perspective. So there will definitely be a benefit to moving. I think security patches and things like that will be released for .NET Framework and for CMS 11, Commerce 13. But over time, I expect organizations will want to move, but you won't be forced to.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot more features released for .NET 5. You're going to see new exciting things coming out. So we definitely are encouraging people to move to .NET 5 as soon as it makes sense for them.
Makes sense. Any closing thoughts, either of you?
I'm really excited to develop on this new platform. As a developer, it just makes things faster and easier. It's easier to talk with other developers. It's easier to share code and ideas, and it's easier to write clean, managed, maintainable, secure code. So we're just very excited to get to the .NET 5. It's been a long time coming, and we're very excited for it.
Well, and I would say the same. I'm excited about it. It's always good when you have happy developers, I think. good when it can be efficient. And I know we'll have a future exploration tech where we're talking about it more from a technical point of view as well. But Drew, I just really appreciate your work on this. Appreciate Optimizely and its investment in this, and I'm excited about the benefit that this can offer to the Optimizely community.
Absolutely. Yes. Thank you, Drew, for taking time with us today. If you enjoyed this session as much as I did, we have Drew Douglas on standby for an additional Exploration Tech session to continue this conversation around .NET. It's going to be in a slightly different spin, but keep your eyes peeled for an update on that next session. It's going to be fantastic. We also have some additional sessions that are coming down the pipeline, so you'll see some updated information about those in the near future as well. As per usual, we will follow up with the recording, and feel free to reach out to us if you want to continue a one-off conversation about .NET and its impact to Optimizely, or if you just want to have a conversation with Drew about development on the .NET framework. Excellent. Thanks, everyone, for your time today, and have a great day.